This is an Ellis Mowers and Mower small engine repair. Stay connected on Instagram and Facebook at Ellis Mowers and More. Comments or questions? Leave them below or email me, ellis@ellismowers.com. Parts used in today's repair are found using the links in the description below. And as always, like and subscribe for more small engine content. On today's repair, we're going to be looking at this Husqvarna riding mower. It has one of the single-cylinder Briggs and Stratton engines on it. This particular model is a YTA 18542. Now YTA, this one has the plastic transmission in it. We will not go into details on that. In this video, I have a video in my queue, or on the channel already, that explains the plastic transmissions in these type mowers. What this one is doing is engine related. It's not turning over. It turns over like a half a turn and then gets caught on the hump, so to speak. It's either one of two things. I'm hoping that it is not a compression release. I'm hoping that it is just a valve adjustment. Part of me is leaning to a valve adjustment, but we will see when we get in here. I want to show y'all everything that you should check before going into putting a compression release on it, if you have to, because the compression release are inside the engine. You have to take the whole engine off, turn it over, break open the sump, scrape off the gasket, replace the camshaft, fish all the other debris and stuff from the broken compression release in there, and all that stuff. Here are the things that I know have been done to it. I know a new battery's been put in it. A starter has not. You don't just start throwing parts at it just thinking that the starter went bad. A lot of people put starters in these things, and it's almost never the problem on these single-cylinder Briggs especially. It's either associated with valves or compression release. So before we get into it, I will double check to make sure the starter is free. It does seem to be turning the engine over really easily, which is what I'll show y'all next until it gets to that hump. We're going to break open the valve cover, check the valves, put them back in spec, and if everything is still doing the same thing after we do all of that, then it's time to put a compression release in it. Let's see what we get into on this video. Hopefully we're not pulling the engine and changing out a compression release. But if we are, then that's just what it's going to be, right? So let's get going. First thing I do whenever I'm working on especially these single-cylinder Briggs is jack up the front of the mower. So what happens is whenever you take this valve cover off, the oil will not spill all down into the exhaust and things along those lines. The Husqvarnas have a little deck mount that is in front of the main drive pulley that I just raise it up on. I have had no issues with it. I've done that with several. So what we'll do now is we will get into this. That's 4 10 millimeters. And these newer Briggs, this is I believe 2016, yeah, are usually held on by RTV. So I'm going to grab a screwdriver and we're just going to slowly peel this out. So we're going to be very careful as we do this. I'm going to go in on this side. And we're going to see if we can pry it up. Come on now. Alright, there we go. Got it broke loose, which is good. Should just kind of try to peel off now. I like to do it on the top because I don't like doing it on the bottom just because that's where these are prone to leaking out. There we go. Okay. When we pull this off, we'll just do a visual inspection to see how bad the valves are. Okay. We'll just put some RTV back on it after we know if it's a valve issue or not. So a lot of times the exhaust valve, which is the one on the top here, is the one that's the culprit. So well, it's a little bit difficult to turn right there, so part of me thinks, well, I don't have the park brake on either, so put the park brake on, it should be a little bit easier to turn now. But that seems to be a little loose, but not bad. And I'm always hopeful that it's just valves, because let's see, 5 thousandths is about where you want to be. That actually feels okay. Oh, that's a 7 thousandths, so let's see if we can get it to 10. So it's at like 8 thousandths or so right there. Let's check the, oh, yeah. I can already tell you just by the feel test here that it's going to be a compression release. Darn it. Okay. I ordered one already, so it's just a matter of putting it on. We will adjust these valves just in case. This particular one is going to require a 15 T15 and a 5/8 wrench, so I'll grab those. And just in case this is what you need to do, this is always the first step. Even if your valves are just a tiny bit out, it could be the difference. I'm doubting that it is on this one. Pull this T15, turn your 5/8 wrench just a little bit, especially if they're just a little bit out of spec. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. That's really close to 5 thousandths, so that's good. And I'll double check just to, I'm going to rotate the engine just a little bit. I can already tell you the compression release is bad on this, just by how it's acting. Alright, so I think we just did that one, didn't we? No, we did the intake, so this is the exhaust. Yeah, that ain't far out, unfortunately. I can basically squeeze it in there. If it's just a little bit tighter at 3 thousandths, it's fine too. We'll back it off just a tiny bit. Okay, so the 5 thousandths will go in, the 7 thousandths will barely. So we're just a little bit on the high side. There we go. And try that one more time. All right, there we go. I think we're in good shape now. Yeah, so we're good. What I'm going to do is just put it back down. Again, I'm fairly certain that the starter is fine because it just suddenly happened for him. So I'm just going to throw this valve cover back on. I'm not going to put any extra sealant or anything on it yet because I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to pull this whole engine off and do this. So yeah, let me do that. I'll get it back on the ground, show y'all. We're going to attempt to start it here. Probably not going to start, and then we'll get into the compression release. Alright, so we're going to test it. I'm going to try and crank it, but like I said, I doubt that it's going to. We'll see. Yeah. And I'll double check the voltage of the battery. And if it's over 12.5, it's a 12.1. I'm going to grab my jump box and see if that makes any difference. Like I said, I highly doubt it will, though. Alright, let's see what happens. Jump box is connected. Like I said, I can feel it in the engine. I'll double check the oil, but the oil's actually a little low, so it's not hydrolocking. That's with the jump box too. We'll double check. So it just barely turned over, but I mean, you gotta throw everything and the kitchen sink at it in order for it to turn over. So, given that, we got to get into it for the compression release. And what I'll do, I will grab everything that I need, because, again, it took me a jump box and turning it all the way back to the beginning of the stroke in order for it to turn over like that. Now that I know that, and it barely kicked over. So you don't want to run it with all those metal parts kind of in there either. So what I'm going to do is, number one, throw the battery on the charger because it needs a little charge. And I'm also going to take the engine off of it. I'll show you how to take the engine off of these. It's really not too hard, and we will put a compression release on it. Alright, we are at the point of taking everything off. I'm going to give you all a crash course of everything that I did to get to this point. The engine cover is 4 10mm bolts, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. There's a 5th screw that screws in right here to the intake elbow, and that's basically it when it comes to that. What I have also done is I have taken the engine portion of the wiring harness out. That is a 6-pin connector. That is plugged into this stator wire here. And then there's the other end of the 6-pin connector. That wire runs to the ignition coil here. And then there's another 2-prong wire, a black and a gray, that runs to the anti-backfire solenoid. And the black wire goes in, the fisheye goes right into that right there on the block. One other thing I've also done, I have taken the starter out. It's just a 7/16 inch nut and 2, I believe T30 Torx bits, or you could use a 1/2 inch, I believe. The Torx get in a little bit easier because of the way that you're looking at the starter. That bolt right there is a little difficult to get out. There's also a little kind of little keeper for these 2 wires right here that you'll put back on this bolt whenever you put it back in. You can see that this has been leaking at the outlet for the oil drain plug. And I also used, in this case, it could be a Torx, it could be a Hex head, to get the exhaust pipe off. In this case, it's just an exhaust pipe that I needed to get off here. I'm looking around just to make sure I haven't missed anything on the top end. We're going to go down to the bottom end. I'll show you what you have to get off on the bottom end. The double stack pulley is a 5/8 on this mower. Again, if you have another mower, it's very similar to this. And then it's just 4 mounting bolts on the bottom. And you'll see where they are. You can kind of see where I've taken them out here. And then one more thing that I just remembered is on this side, you can keep the carburetor and the throttle plate and everything on. You just need to remove the throttle cable, the breather pipe, or the, what will this be, the vapor pipe that goes back to the gas tank, and the fuel line. And I put the oil filter back on. I might take off this elbow here just so I don't break it. So I'm going to get a couple of 7/16, take that off, and then what I'm going to do is just literally just pull this thing out. Whenever you're taking the double stack pulley off the bottom, just set the parking brake to relieve the slack on the belt so that the pulley will just fall down. So 7/16. Took the elbow off, and this thing should just come on out now. Oh, also, I drained the oil out of it. That's a given. And there we are. So while I've got it out, I'll tighten this. I'll clean it up, number one. And I'll tighten up this oil drain as well, because you can see it's not even finger tight, so we need to fix that. I already drained most of the oil out, if not all of it, so this shouldn't be a big deal. We'll clean all this up. This just needs a very good cleaning. You can just take an adjustable wrench or something. I don't know the exact, it's a 7/8. No, it's bigger than that, but I'm going to take an adjustable and just tighten that down so that it's more than finger tight. Guys, I see that a lot. If you see oil draining or leaking out from this, just tighten it up, because you don't want to run this thing low on oil and blow it up. So, this one they had kept the oil and topped it off and hadn't really had an issue with it. But again, easily avoidable. I can't tell you how many engines I've had to change out because that started getting loose and leaking, and it leaked all the oil out, and then it locked up. So I'm going to get this on the bench up here. I will show you what you need to do to take everything off next. Alright guys, I'm going to give y'all an aerial view of this, and I do want to mention that these bolts, starting in like 2016, Briggs started putting these a lot of anti-seize, or a lot of thread locker on these bolts, and I've had a couple of them that if you're not careful with the impact, they will snap right off on you, and that is the last thing that you want to happen. So we've taken all of these off. What I do with the impact, whenever I'm taking these off, I like to use kind of a medium speed, but these are locked on hard. I just kind of bump it, kind of like that, because you don't want to be cranking down on this thing going bah, 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 and it break off like right here, because then you're kind of screwed, or break off down here and then you're really screwed. So I am certain that this is a compression release issue. This has got an oil filter attachment on it as well. And we got to get it's 3 5/16 just to get this plate off. There's an O-ring inside it. Sometimes the kit comes with that. But there is an oil pump in here. And y'all help me remember to put that oil pump back in. I did not do one on accident. And I did not blow the engine up, but I had to take it all back apart just to put an oil pump in. So I just take a rubber mallet. The oil filter we're not going to use anymore. So we're just going to gently tap up on it. And fairly clean on the inside, so that's a positive. And what we have, Exhibit A right there for you, broken compression release. So I heard it go back, or some things clunk whenever I originally did this. There's the oil pump, so that's good. We'll just put that to the side as well. Now the camshaft, what we're going to do is see if we can rotate this. I think I've still got the compression on it, which is not ideal, but we get it just around to, you'll see 2 dots. One on the crankshaft and one on the camshaft. Line them up. When you line those up, you should just be able to pull this bad boy right out. And what is supposed to, let's just stuff fall off everywhere now. Alright, so what is supposed to happen, there's like plastic and stuff here too, is that you are supposed to have, oh, it broke the governor. That's part of the oil slinger mechanism. I'm gonna have to see if I can find a governor for this. I don't know if I've got one here. I just gotta find it. So I took the governor out. There's some plastic pieces for that. And now basically what I've got to do is grab a magnet. And sift through all this metal shrapnel that's down here. There's the main part of it. There's another piece. Some of the other small metal pieces here as well. Hope it got a governor, so I should have a governor because I've just torn apart a few of these recently. So basically, you just gotta kind of sift around with a magnet. Because the last thing you want is for there to be a metal piece lodged in here somewhere and you not know where it is. So let's see if I can do this. I'm just going to kind of shake everything toward the back here. The lifters will probably come out, but that's okay. Let's see. I'm about to get that dirt out. So I don't see any other pieces. kind of wiggling it around. Oh, there's a little bit of oil in there. And now a little bit of dirt. We will get that out. For the next order of business, and also the reason why I like to take off the starter is because it kind of impedes some of the business that we got going on here in terms of trying to get the gasket off. So if you're lucky, it's just going to fall right off, but it never does. So unless you basically have a brand new mower, even then, you're not going to be lucky. So what I need to do is just scrape all the gasket off. What I like to do when it comes to that is I like to grab, just kind of dry it off with a rag at first, but then what I also like to do is just take a scraper and scrape off as much as I can, and then I'll take a wire brush on a drill and usually get the rest. So I need to search for a governor, and I'll scrape this off as well as off of the sump, tighten up that oil drain, and when we get to the point where I'm about to put the new camshaft in, I'll bring y'all back in. Well, we're about at the point to put everything back on. I've done my best to clean out inside here. I turned it over just to get all the debris and any other extra items out. I have scraped down the gasket as good as I can with a wire brush and with a scraper. And so what we'll do now, I'll give it one good cleaning here on the outside, and we will put in the new camshaft. As compared to the old camshaft, it actually has a compression release here in just a second. Okay, so we're going to put this camshaft back in it now. We've got a good compression release on this camshaft, so that's good. We're going to slide this in. Line the dots up, just like so. It should slide right in still. Found a good governor from another engine. We are going to slide that into place as well. It goes on this governor arm, and then what you do, a lot of these gasket kits, they'll come with lifters and a top and a bottom gasket. Typically I don't have any issues if the gasket is not leaking, and I typically don't go through replacing them. But the problem is these get really entangled in the box because of the way they transport them and all that stuff. So let's see if we can slide these. There we go. So we just got to slide everything around. Should be pretty self-explanatory. Everything needs to line up as well when you go through this. This is one of the harder parts about it. It's just lining up all the holes and everything. You can use the guide pins. I will link the description of this carb kit, or link the carb kit in the description below for you. The camshaft anyways. And like I said, it works. They work really well. And if the OEM Briggs one lasts as little as 80 hours, why not take a gamble on an aftermarket one, especially since you can hardly find genuine Briggs parts currently. What we're going to do is slide this on. Let's see if we can get everything, all the gaskets and everything situated. Oh, I wanted to come up a little bit on me. That's the hardest part about this whole job, or one of the hardest parts, is just getting all the gaskets situated. Come on now. Alright, we've worked that out. We'll put the gasket back in the hole. Let's see. is out of this side, of course. This is like I said, this is a very, because of the way that the gasket comes, it comes all crinkled up, and so that provides a little bit of a challenge to get everything on. That's the worst part about these little cheap kits, and they come in boxes, and the gaskets are just all over the place. So let's see. Let's put it on. I probably have my head over y'all the whole time right there, but all right, let's see if we can slide this down a little bit. At least get it on to where it needs to be here. The gasket is all screwed up in the front though. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time getting this gasket lined up, and I'll rejoin you in a second. Alright, what I've done is I went bolt by bolt and got everything kind of snugged in, and was able to just kind of work it with a screwdriver and a pair of pliers here to get it in. I have put the oil pump back in as well. I worked the gasket back around so that it goes over the crankshaft, and now we're just I made sure also that the governor stayed where it was supposed to, and now we're just in the process of tapping it down. To have everything stay where it needs to. Kind of wants to not go down all the way right now for some reason. But what I'll do, we're going to be careful with this, is grab my impact driver. We're just going to slowly there we go, that's all it needed. We're going to take it kind of slow here. And just go in a pattern. So I've dialed this back a little bit. Also, have very little anti-seize on these still. Okay, and here, 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 and here. All right, so now you have to get your torque wrench out. You're going to torque everything to 18 foot-pounds. We're going to clean this up as well. So we have put everything back on for the oil pump also, which is a little slider piece as well as the little square piece here. And then there's a star piece on the outside. So we're all back on there. We can put that back on as well. Just need a couple of, I believe, 5/16 to get those in. Oh, these are the, not the correct bolts. You're going to have a couple of 5/16 bolts. Those are the valve cover bolts. Again, this gets really messy in here, guys, if you're not careful. So this can go, this is trash. This is trash. Ah. They look like this, guys. So I did take the valve cover off in order to get the lifters back in as well. We're going to put this back on. Just such a pain to do these sometimes. Just for a simple issue of a half doesn't start. And you got to do all of this. But that's okay. We're going to use .5/16 to get this back on here. Be careful with a light impact. We'll go back with a ratchet. Just to make sure. So that's tight. That's tight. That's tight. I'm going to torque these to 18 foot-pounds with a torque wrench, again in a star pattern. Don't go more. You don't want to break off your bolt. Alright guys, we're at the point of putting everything back together. I've already gotten to the point where I can at least start it. I'm just going to show you all everything that I did because it's just easier to show it to you that way, I feel. So again, you have to put the engine back on, your 4 mounting bolts back in. These were 9/16. Your starter's back on. There's a little clip that goes beside the starter where those wires are kept that go to the stator, and then your second starter bolt right there. Your wiring, one of them connects into the stator, and then the other two go around here. One of them connects into the ignition coil. The other one goes under and clips to the tin underneath of the mower, or underneath of the engine here, and hooks to that ground, the black wire, and then the gray wire, which is attached to just the 2-wire plug there, is that. So it plugs into the anti-backfire on the bottom of the engine. I torqued everything to 18 foot-pounds. You have to be kind of careful. You don't want to strip off any bolts in there or strip any threads. One of them tried to strip. I don't think it stripped enough to matter, thankfully. This never came off. And we put the exhaust bolts back on as well. We redid the valves to the correct clearances and put the valve cover back on. I do need to seal the valve cover back up. I just want to make sure everything runs like it's supposed to. Hook the fuel line back up. Hook the throttle cable back up. When I hook the throttle cable back up, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll put it at full throttle before the choke and make sure that this throttle arm is basically right where the choke is, and then line up the throttle cable like that. We'll put the vent, the return vent back together when we put on all of this stuff here. But we are at the point, obviously I put oil in it as well, and a new oil filter on it. Charge the battery, hook the battery back up. And I think that's everything that I did. So, what I'm going to do now, we're going to, I'll show you before we get it started. I haven't put the double stack pulley back on. I just wanted to make sure that it ran before I did any more work than I needed to. But I can show you that it is turning over very well now. So now the only wild card is, did the governor and the compression release damage anything that we care about in the engine? Hopefully the answer is no. We'll get this thing running. I'll set y'all up. We'll let it run for a minute, make sure everything is good, and then we will put everything back together, give it a really good cleaning. I did clean off the mounting area, and then I'm just going to go through with a pressure washer and just go to town on the rest of it after I get it all back together, just to clean everything up and make everything look a lot better for around the engine bay so that there's no oil, and also just the mower overall. Although it's really not in that bad a shape. Alright, so I always get nervous whenever I first start these up because I had one that I did. That was that Troy-Bilt pony, and then it blew up on camera. But I feel like that one was severely neglected and wasn't in nearly as good a shape as this. So I'll choke it to get it started and then bring the RPMs down, let it run for a couple minutes, and then we'll put everything back on it and be done with this, hopefully. Almost feels like it's flooding itself or something. Yeah, that's weird. Oh. Let's see. Got a decent amount of, feels like back pressure almost. Man. Double check the valves one more time, guys. It's weird, I just gave it a shot of starting fluid and it started. Let it do its thing here for a minute or two. Sounds good. We're going for about a minute now. For a minute, and then we'll put everything else back together. Well, we have just tested it out for a good 10 to 15 minutes here, and fantastic. So I know this mower's been run pretty hard in its life, but it's been taken pretty decent care of, so that's good. You would think that these really aggressive tires on the front would make it hard to steer, but since they have higher air pressure and I guess lower amount of contact on the ground, especially on flat surfaces, it's actually easier to steer on this machine, which is great. So the compression release fixed this. It's not an easy job, but a straightforward job to diagnose. The problem is you have to take everything off. It just becomes a mess. Garage gets in shambles, tools everywhere. You just have to clean it up after you're finished with it. So this customer is going to be back happy and mowing again. This is the one that has the plastic transmission in it. Luckily, it's still doing all right on this one. It is trying to stick a little bit between forward and reverse, which is kind of what mine is doing, my personal one's doing, except his is a lot better than mine at this point. But yeah, as y'all saw, it just kicked right over, started right up. So the thing is, to test, I've got a link in the description below for that camshaft. I've been putting these carb hub aftermarket camshafts in these single cylinder Briggs for about 3 years now, and not a single one of them's come back yet, so that's good. I'm sure it will only be a matter of time, but if you go by the OEM Briggs and Stratton ones, I've had some, especially on the newer mowers, that have lasted only 80 hours. So it's like, what's the advantage at that point to buying a $90 camshaft versus a $30 camshaft that'll produce most likely the same results and hopefully better results? So that's my thinking along those lines with the camshafts. I know a lot of people say go OEM, OEM, OEM. Definitely OEM when it comes to belts on certain machines, especially MTD products. But for these single cylinder Briggs, with the known issue of how bad the OEM camshafts are, I'm fine with going aftermarket. Hope y'all enjoyed this video. I've done quite a few of these on the channel, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more to come. I just wanted to take y'all through the diagnosis process so that y'all didn't go out and buy a new battery, new starter, starter solenoid, because there's $100 gone right there when you could just spend $30 an afternoon in the garage. Maybe you can probably get it knocked out in 2 to 3 hours if you know what you're doing. The longest part is scraping off the gasket. So everything else is just unbolting a bunch of bolts and lining it up with top dead center, pulling the old cam out, putting the new one in, getting all the debris and stuff out of the bottom of it, and you're good to go. So I appreciate y'all watching as always. Thanks for the support of the channel. I hope y'all enjoyed watching the video replacing the camshaft here on this Husqvarna. Take care, and I'll catch you on the next video.